So there was a burglar in a house one night. The flashlight was dark, and he's going around the house looking for valuables, and he takes a CD player and puts it in his bag, and just as he does that, he hears this voice saying, "Jesus is watching you." And he looks around, doesn't see anything, says, I think when I'm done with this job, I really need a vacation. And so he starts, and he sees a stereo, and he starts unplugging the cords, and he's about to put it in his bag, and he hears a voice again, "Jesus is watching you." And he's like, "Who said that?" And he's taking his flashlight, and he's looking all around the room, and in the corner, in a cage, is a parrot. And he goes up to the parrot, and he goes, "Did you say that?" And the parrot said, "Yes, I'm giving you a warning." And he said, Why would you be giving me a warning? Who are you anyway? He goes, "My name is Moses." He goes, "What kind of people name their parrot Moses?" The parrot says, "The same kind of people that name their Rottweiler Jesus." I love that. So in this series of surrendering, we should surrender to the voice of wisdom. Sometimes it's a parrot, and we need to mend our ways. It's so hard for us to do this, to let ourselves get out of control. You ever want to get out of control? Stop controlling and surrendering. We're working with Coot Blackson's book. This is week 3 of a 7-week series. It's a great book called The Magic of Surrender. Not easy to surrender, but very simple in its premise. Just surrender control. Just do it. Just let it all go. Just let yourself be out of control. In the Great Plains, during the blizzards and whiteout blizzard conditions, often farmers would connect a string from their house to the barn, because they could go out to the barn and it'd be total whiteout and lose their way to find their home when they needed to go back home. And so they tie this string. Surrendering is like tying that string from our souls to our souls, allowing ourselves to rejoin our souls with our roles, allowing ourselves to find our way back. It can help you find your way back to your own wholeness by freeing you up from hanging on so tightly to all those things we think we need, and all those identities we think we need, and all those labels that we give ourselves and we give other people and we give our circumstances. It can be exhausting. We need to let ourselves get out of control. Out of control. Coot Blackson tells a great story in the beginning of this chapter about being on a train platform in India and waiting for this train and getting there a half hour early like we would here, and thinking the train's going to be here when it says it's going to be here, and waiting and waiting and waiting, which turns out to be a 9-hour train delay. And he's frustrated, and he's getting angry, and he's like, why can't the trains in India be on time? And then he notices a family that had spread out a picnic, and they had a blanket on the platform, and they were eating, and they were laughing, and they were having a good time. And he's like, why are these people having a good time? Don't they know the train's coming? But the train wasn't coming. The train comes when the train comes. He finally met a man about midnight. The train was supposed to be there at 9 o'clock at night. Met a man about midnight who said, the train's on its own time. You can either be in heaven or in hell on this platform. It's up to you. Why are you worried about the train? What can you do? What can all your worrying and all your stress do to bring the train here any sooner? Nothing. So let go of this need to make the train arrive sooner. You're in hell because you're frustrated that the train isn't here. And Coot talked about these lessons on the platform These lessons on the platform, it feels like to me sometimes when I'm up here, but lessons on the platform where he realized that, his mom, when his mom was dying, was the best time he ever had with his mom. Why was he in such a hurry to catch that train, get to the next destination, instead of spending more time with his mom? It's a lesson on that platform for him to slow down, to allow life to unfold, to stop being so rigid in its need to have things go his way. He says this on page 88, we don't always get to choose what the lesson is or how the lesson shows up, but we can determine how we go about learning it and whether we actually get the message or not. It's always our choice. It's our power of will, our ability to choose. We choose whether we want the lesson or don't want the lesson, whether we accept the lesson or do anything about the lesson or not. It's always our choice. We can continue to hang on to getting things done our way, or we can just let life be. We can let ourselves off the hook. Because resistance doesn't do us any good. Has resistance ever made anything happen quicker? Has resistance ever allowed us to be at peace? Resistance only puts us more in hell, in a mindset of hell on that platform. We can choose to surrender that. So if it's a choice, why do we let ourselves experience that? Why do we just not let life unfold? It's because we don't trust life. We feel like if we're not in control, if we're not dictating and orchestrating how everything goes in our lives, it's all going to fall to pieces. Is it really? Life is incredibly wise and knows what to do without our interference, without our resistance, without our control, without our micromanagement. Coote says this on pages 105 and 106. Each day you take 23,000 breaths. Your heart beats 100,000 times per day. Your blood travels 12,000 miles per day on its journey through your body. 25 million cells are being produced in your body every second. You blink at least 15,000 times a day. All of this is happening simultaneously in your body at this very moment without your effort. So why don't we trust life? All this is going on in our bodies and we don't trust life for it to just unfold. We need to control it. What if our bodies are incredible? If we get a scrape or a cut, it heals all on its own. It doesn't need us watching it. Okay, hurry up. Heal. It doesn't need that. What if every scrape, every cut, every scratch we got never healed? What would we look like today? Yikes. We can hang on to our way or we can surrender. We'd be a mess if we didn't heal, if our bodies didn't heal on their own. There's so many things that happen without our effort. The sun rises every day. The sun sets every day. The tides go in and out. All the animals know exactly their role. And we get attached to certain roles in our lives and feel like we have to make sure that things happen a certain way. And it's exhausting. And so many things can happen without our effort, but that doesn't mean we don't take action. It doesn't mean surrender means non-action. Coote says this on page 115, surrender doesn't mean non-action. It doesn't mean being passive, doing nothing or not taking responsibility for your part. It means you are following the clues instead of trying to make something happen that isn't, or trying to fit life into your little box. It's Unity's fifth principle, that we take action, that we learn these principles and then we use them in our lives. We surrender. We never know when we surrender how life is going to unfold. And I think that's the hard part for us. The not knowing, the unknown. This year and a half has taught us that. The unknown is really challenging to live in. But life has always been unknown. We never know what's going to happen. We can plan. There's nothing wrong with planning. We can have preferences, and there's nothing wrong with that. But letting go of that control, of needing it to be a certain way, just causes us a lot of suffering. It's like expecting the weather to be a certain way and not being happy when it doesn't. We have no control over the weather. We have no control over things that happen in the world, things, other people, just what's going on within us. We need to surrender. One of the great characters in the Bible, and I just love how he surrendered several times in his life and how things just really manifested, and the greatness that his life was is Moses. Not Moses the parrot, Moses the person from the Hebrew scriptures. Moses gave up control. Now, most of you know the story of Moses. He was born during a time when the Pharaoh was killing all the Jewish babies. And so his mom put him in a basket down the Nile, and he was rescued by an Egyptian woman, raised as a prince of Egypt, the Pharaoh's sister's son. And for 40 years, he was raised that way. He grew up in Egypt. He learned all the worldly ways of Egypt. Then he found out about his heritage. And he wanted to go see his people. And he saw how they were treated. For the first time, saw how they were really treated by the Egyptians. And he ends up doing something he later regrets and kills an Egyptian who's beating up a Jew. And he feels like he has to run away. So he escapes, he leaves his world that he knew, his life that he knew, his identity that he knew. He surrendered that life he knew to go to the wilderness. And he went to Midian. And in Midian, he became a shepherd. He became someone of a contemplative, living his life quietly. It's there where he met his wife, Zipporah. And Zipporah, and he ended up getting married, and it's not long after that he has the burning bush experience, where he again surrenders the life he knew to lead his people out of Egypt, to return to Egypt, to lead them out of Egypt. Now, I love Bible stories because there are stories. When we look at them metaphysically, they're not just some story about some dude that happened, a long time ago. It's our story. We need to grow up. And often, most of us grow up knowing the world's ways first. We grow up with this sense consciousness. We grow up knowing cause and effect, learning cause and effect. And then some tragedy happens, maybe something we regret, maybe something that was within our control or not within our control, and we spend some time in the wilderness. We spend some time in contemplation. We have to surrender what we knew our life to be, who we knew ourselves to be, in order to be in a new place, in a new way of being. And it's there that we guard our thoughts. He's a shepherd. Shepherds metaphysically represent protectors of our thoughts. He had to protect those thoughts. And Midian is a place that represents taking dominion of those thoughts. So he's a shepherd that is taking dominion of those thoughts of regret, those thoughts of surrender, those thoughts of, oh, why did I do what I did? We've all been there. And being in a place of quiet. It's in that quiet place. That quiet place. And then he marries Zipporah. And Zipporah was, her name represents little bird. It means little bird, metaphysically. It means he harmonized with thoughts of flight, of freedom. So after we've spent time in the wilderness, after we've spent time in contemplation in that quiet place, protecting those thoughts, harmonizing with the ability to take flight, to change yet again, he has a burning bush experience. He has this inner flame, this inner knowing calling to him. He has again to surrender the life he's known, to follow this calling. How many of us have had that? Where we've just had this knowing, this is ours to do. That's that burning bush experience. This is ours to be. This is who we came in this world to express. It's funny how in each part of his life, he spends 40 years. Now, we can take that literally, meaning he was 80 by the time he was going back to Egypt to leave his people out, and 40 more years in the wilderness after that with the Israelites, and so he was 120 years old, maybe. Or maybe we could look at 40 as a metaphysical meaning of as long as it takes. As long as it takes to complete that phase. And so he has this burning bush experience, this inner flame, this inner knowing, and what does he do? What? You want me to do that? Don't we make excuses? We often make so many excuses when we hear our guidance. Oh, no, not me. Not me. I'm not an eloquent speaker. I'm not a leader. People aren't going to follow me. His excuses to God, the burning bush within. But God, Spirit says, oh yes. If I wasn't calling you, I wouldn't call you if you didn't already have the gifts you need to do it. So many times we get guided to be a certain way, to do a certain thing, and we think, who am I to do that? You wouldn't have that longing. You wouldn't have that calling if Spirit wasn't calling you, if Spirit didn't know you've got what it takes. You got everything you need. So then Moses says, well, who am I to say is directing me? Who is it? And what does the bush say? I am. I am. You are. I am able to change, to surrender, to give up this life I've known, to live a fuller life, a more free life, a more expressive life, a more expansive life that helps others. And what does he do with that? He leads his people out of Egypt to freedom. The Jewish people represent spiritual thoughts. He releases those spiritual thoughts from bondage. We do that every time we surrender. We have that within us. It's us. Looking back on my life, I see that I had this, I kind of had a call to ministry. It was different when I was younger, but I definitely was always super involved in the church. And it was the Catholic Church for the first 40 years, as long as it took, but it was literally 40 years that I was in the Catholic Church. And I had this deep sense of knowing that that's where I wanted to be, that's where I belonged, that's where my fullness would come into expression, but I needed the Egypt experience first. I couldn't become a nun when I was a teenager. I needed to be a wife and a mom and a employee and have a job and have a house, and I needed those worldly things. I wasn't ready. But I'm so glad that I went through that. And then have a wilderness experience, a contemplative time in my life where I really had to discern. And Coot talks about this in his book, is needing to discern what is ours to do, what is ours to be. Making that choice. I needed to wait for that divine timing to be right. Or maybe I just took a longer road. We often do that too. It doesn't mean it's a mistake, it just means it's a longer path to get to where you're going to end up. Yesterday I went for a walk, and I'm glad I was walking and not running, because I almost stepped on a praying mantis. It was just right under my foot, and I was able to move right away. And I always love Googling, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean if you almost step on a praying mantis? There's nothing in Google for that answer. But a praying mantis represents trust and introspection and new perspectives, new attitudes, and looking within. So when you see a praying mantis, it can mean that for you in your life. And I've noticed that that's exactly what I've been doing in starting this spiritual direction program. Just started last week, 2 classes every week for 2 years. Ugh. But it's a lot of looking within. It's a lot of self-awareness. It's a lot of looking at unfixables. What is mine to fix is not any of you or any circumstance that is outside of me, but only what's within me is mine. There's a lot of synchronicity of messages that I'm getting lately. In one of the books that we're reading, talks about rejoining your soul with your role. Rejoining those two. We so often get ourselves identified with those roles that we play in life. But rejoining the soul with the role means to surrender those identities and come into your fullness, come into your wholeness, realizing that you're a lot more than those roles. It can give new life to those roles when you can see the more that you are than that role. But it's impossible without surrender. We have to surrender to get to that. And sometimes that means to take action, and sometimes it means to wait. Coot talks about surfers having to wait for the right wave. They will paddle themselves out in the ocean and wait. They don't just jump on the first wave that comes along. They wait for the right wave. There's no control over it. The ocean is like life. We have no control over it. There are big waves and small waves and wide waves and all kinds of waves. And we don't have any control over it, but we wait for what is ours, what wave is ours to ride. calls it, one of the surfers called it the ultimate improvisation. I love that term, the ultimate improvisation, because to me, that's life, when we surrender to letting life unfold. The ultimate improvisation. I was looking for a video to show, because when I hear the word improvisation, I think of that show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Maybe you've seen it. Drew Carey hosts it. There weren't any that were appropriate for church, but they're really funny. But I did find the rules for improvisation and how closely they align with the rules for life. First rule, be ready to play. Be ready to play in life. Have fun. Life is meant to be joyful. Be present and engaged in the moment. So improv and in life, be ready to play. Second rule, let yourself fail. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. We learn more from our failures than our successes. So let yourself fail. Trust that it's all going to be okay. Always be listening. We should be listening more than we're speaking. Very important in improv, because otherwise you miss the clues that come to you. If you're not listening and paying attention, they say this is the most important skill in improv. I think it's the most important skill in life too. Listen. Listen to that still small voice. Listen to the people around you, because they're going to show you what they need, what this soul needs. They will tell you. Another rule, say yes. We did a whole year on saying yes here. Say yes to life. Say yes. When in improv, if you once you say no and you don't agree with what the other actor is saying, you hit a wall. There's nowhere you can go. You got to say yes. And what do you do when you say yes? After you say yes, you expand on it. Don't just say yes. Say yes and. Yes, and. Another rule, play the game. Play the game. We're here to have fun. So, and then finally, relax and have fun. Relax and have fun. With improv, it's fun. Scary. I think about doing it, but fun. So is life. So is life, with its ups and downs and challenges and rewards and all of it. We are here to experience all of it in this lifetime. So, improvising, the ultimate improvisation. There are so many advantages. We become more positive. We become more creative. We become a better team player, a better listener. We make better choices. We bring out the playful side of our nature. And we enjoy the moment. So let life be that ultimate improvisation for you. Let go, let yourself get out of control. Coote says on page 116, you have control over your response, your words, your actions, and how you show up. And that's it. We don't have control over all the other stuff, but just what's going on inside of us. How we show up can make a world of difference. Or we can make excuses and reasons why we don't want to show up. We can stay stuck in our identities and stay stuck in our roles and stuck in our smallness. But there's always the opportunity to surrender and be free, to let yourself get a little out of control and have more fun in life. So it's up to you. How do you want to show up in life? How do you want to experience life? I want to end with a prayer that Coote wrote. It's in this chapter. It's on pages 102 and 103. I surrender my need for control. I surrender the way I think life should be. I surrender my desire that things be different. I surrender. I surrender my need to know. I surrender my need to be known. I I surrender my need for other people's approval. I surrender my imperfections and need for things to be perfect. I surrender my goals and my dreams. I surrender ego. I surrender I. Thank you, universe. I ask for everything that is not in alignment with my. I ask only for the highest good to be made manifest in my life. I surrender everything. Thank you, universe. I surrender. Peace be with you. Namaste.